Chapter 4.
Here we are.
Delta.
Mandatory buds chapter.
Mandatory buds chapter. Before we even begin this, there are so many books, movies, anything and everything on buds, and there's a reason for it. It's a very tough selection process. It washes out a lot of people. It's what most people that are trying out for it are scared. They're scared of the course because it's a nut kicker. But you have to, if you want to talk about the other stuff, you've got to go back to where it all started, and that is buds. There's no way to cut it. You just kind of got to talk about it, and things that were developed, things that you kind of sucked at, you did well at, and it just kind of made you who you are. And that's where your reputation starts, right there at buds.
At Indoc.
At Indoc, which is 5 weeks before buds. So
that's what some people might understand. You don't just show up day one, week one.
Yeah, you don't just show up like first day. All right, let's go. It changes all the time. Like there's pre-buds now, and I don't know what's happening. Right. But when I went through, I can really only obviously speak from my experiences. Is there was a 5? You get there, you get checked in, and then you do, and then your Indoc starts. Okay. Before then, you're just kind of in limbo. You work out for like an hour or two, and then you just chill in San Diego. Indoc starts. It's more of like a 6 a.m. to like noon, 1 o'clock, and it's workout basic stuff, and it's like 5 weeks. And then day 1, week 1, a first phase, buds, you're assigned your class number, which I was 237, starts. And that's, so there's 3 phases in buds. First phase, which is your basic underwater training, Hell Week, the infamous Hell Week's in it.
It's kind of a washout phase. Right?
Kind of a washout. It really gets rid of the people. It's kind of like your boot camp for the SEAL community. Second phase moves into the dive phase, which is 2 months, and then third phase is the land warfare. We go over, learn about guns of all types, and then explosives. So
blowing stuff up,
the fun stuff.
So when you get to Indoc, the posturing starts.
Yes, right? Yes. You pucker up, if that's what you're saying.
Well, and I'm sure different guys are going to react different ways.
Of course, yeah.
And nobody's been there before, except maybe a couple guys are rollbacks.
There's a couple rollbacks in there that kind of like help out, but I don't even think during Indoc
they're around.
There's any surf torture. Okay. Like I don't think there's any. I think we might have like gotten wet to cool off or something, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think there's any. I don't think that starts till first phase.
One of my favorite parts is, the guys saying, "Oh, I've been training to be sleep deprived," or "I didn't know the water was cold."
We've talked about that. Yeah, you can't train for being cold, and you can't train for sleep deprivation. You can't. Just
makes it worse.
It just makes it worse. It's dumb.
Yeah,
it's dumb.
So what's it like to stand there after, at this point, years of wanting to become a SEAL?
The books.
You've read the books. You've seen the movies. Yeah. And now you're there, standing on the little flipper prints.
It was weird. It was kind of like, all right, game on. Here we are. Let's go. Let's go. And I never really thought like, oh, I hope this isn't hard. Like I knew it was going to be hard. Right. And I got people where you actually know their names are next to you going through it with you. You form some awesome relationships were formed. So yeah, it was fun, man. Buds was a kick in the nuts for sure, but it was fun. Like it really was. It was really cool. It tested you. You learn a lot about your body, about you, about your brain and your heart. And as we know how I feel about the mindset piece, right? Like it really just takes it to a whole new level. And when you think you're at that level, you go to another training, which we'll get in later chapters, and it goes to a higher level. So yeah, it was a really cool course. The instructors were good.
But not nice.
Not nice. No, they beat the crap out of you.
Let's talk about some of the implements. You mentioned surf torture. Like what are some of the things they would do to you?
I say like the biggest thing like to get you miserable is like they'd always say wet and sandy, which means you go out into the surf, you'd come back and they would call it sugar cookie. You roll around in the sand, you get like the abrasive like sand all over you. So every time you're like your legs are rubbing together, they're chafing. I mean, you'd be raw in here, you'd be raw right here. Guys would be raw everywhere. Like I had a really good friend, Mike Gall, who went through buds with, and he's a bigger dude, big old football player from Nebraska, but dude, his legs were just like raw meat
rubbing together.
But I mean, he didn't quit. You just kept going, kept chugging along.
What surprised me when I toured the Bud's compound, there's not much to it.
It's not much to it.
It's like a middle school 1960s looking building.
Yeah, it's nothing.
And then cold water and sand. Cold water. And that's all they need.
The biggest thing they have is that ocean right there. That's between 55 and 65 degrees year round. So obviously wintertime is colder than because the current comes from the north to the south. So
get you wet and sandy. You have to.
And you run everywhere. So you're dropping weight, and we know how I feel about running. It sucks. I'm not a big fan of running, but to get anywhere, you had to run.
Log PT,
carry those big old telephone poles, like cut up for your 6-man boat crew or whatever man boat crew you have, and you just do drills, lift them over your head, running up and down the sand berms that are probably, I don't know how tall they are, but maybe 20, 30 feet. You're running them up backwards, doing all kinds of stuff, passing logs, going to different sides, doing sit-ups to the logs, all kinds of stuff, man. Just they're very creative.
Team building, though.
Team building, absolutely. Which is funny. Most people do not like log PT. It was my favorite thing because it was the closest thing to lifting weights.
Okay.
So, because I had to make the decision, and I tried this and failed horribly during NDOC. Because you're still doing hardcore work.
Right.
I would go to the gym after, and it would just beat my body down. Mind you, I'm younger now. Like, I'm 43 now. I was like 23, 24 then.
Your body can recover a lot faster.
My body was not, okay, I need to stop. So I had to, stop lifting weights completely, which is the first time I've done that in a few years. So I did that, and then just okay, I just do Bud stuff. That's all I do, because this is where it doesn't matter how big Eddie's muscles are. It doesn't, who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter now.
We'll get to that. There's time for that later.
Yeah, right.
And one thing we didn't talk a lot about in the last chapter, but is obviously a huge defining life event, is in this period of your life, you just become a father. So you're not only going through one of the most brutal selection and training processes in the world, you're doing it as a dad of a toddler?
Yeah, I want to say she was 3 when we moved out there. So I had, going back to last chapter, had Kayla, I'd say probably 2.5, 3-year mark of my Marine Corps tour. So I had her, and then we went, I would say she was about 3. And so I was married with one daughter, and we all went out to San Diego, and we lived there in an apartment while I did all my training.
So you're staying in an apartment at night. You're coming on, driving over onto the post early in the morning, doing your training all day, then going home and having dinner and laying on the couch, trying to make bath time or something, trying to do something. But you're so spent, right?
Like you're so spent. You're drained. You're drained emotionally because you're worried about passing the events, because there's events it seems like all the time. You got to pass or you're gone. And then physically, because you're running everywhere and you're doing push-ups and then I'm sure you've been out in the cold. You come in from the cold and you go to a warm place, you get super tired. So being in the cold water all the time, and then you come home where it's you get a hot shower and you got some good food in your belly.
Body will shut down.
You're food coma, good night. I'm just you're done. And you got to be up the next morning super early to do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so true. The only easy day was yesterday, and that's really true.
And that's because it's over.
Because it's over. It's done. It's past. You still got to worry about today.
So how bad was Hell Week in comparison to the rest of the program?
Hell Week was hell, but you're expecting it. I did my research. Some guys didn't do their research, and it's just it's a mind game more than anything. You're going to be cold. You're going to be worn out from doing thousands of push-ups, squats, whatever. I mean, you name it, any kind of physical activity you do at obstacle courses, with boats, without boats, buddy carrying people, all kinds of stuff. But it takes you to that another level. I think it's by Wednesday, you're clinically insane because you're just not processing things normally like you would if you're an arrested individual. It's very, as I would explain it, very out of body experience, but you can very much feel what's going on. You know what I mean? So it's, it was crazy. It was just okay, it's Wednesday. All right, cool. We only got, a couple more days, or you know, you're getting pumped. And like every time somebody would quit, I got more motivation. Like, okay, I'm better than you now. Like, and I would use that. That was my pick me up. That was my like power gel to keep going, of seeing dudes, seeing those helmets, you know, that they line up those helmets when they quit, they put them together in a line and they take them everywhere just so they remind you. And as that line got bigger, I'm like, boom, heck yeah. My buddy Joe and I would always, my roommate, we'd always be like, got a couple more helmets. Yep. Our class is getting smaller because you want it smaller.
Right.
You want it smaller.
Right.
So it was cool.
It's almost like it was your few hours in the sand pit stretched into 6 days.
Pretty much, but there's a difference. Mindset.
Right.
My mindset there and at Hell Week were two different entities. The one at Bud's was like, let's bring it. Like, bring it. I don't give it. It didn't matter what they said, what they say they were going to do, if they did it or not. It did not matter. I was like, my body's yours. Let's go. Like, you're not breaking me. Like, you are not breaking me. I mean, as long as I don't get a serious injury. Right. I mean, that happens.
And I'm sure a lot of guys do.
Yeah, and they do. They get a lot of neck injuries, shoulders, knees. I mean, all kinds of stuff. But I'd say probably your neck's probably your biggest one because of that boat. And
after Hell Week, you do the hydrographic reconnaissance stuff, which surprised me. You kind of said
surprised me. I was like, yeah, I'm done with Hell Week. It's going to be so much easier for the rest of this phase because you got Hell Week, Walk Week, so you actually get to walk that week. Where all the swelling of your hands, your feet, because you swell up big time. So it brings that down so you can get back to normal. And then you're back in the water and you start develop hydrophobia, where you're afraid of the water.
Cold water, especially.
Cold water, yeah. So like, you know, you'd wash your hands, you just turn on the water. It doesn't matter if it's cold or hot. It would be to the point where I would wait the minute for it to warm up before I stick my hands in that water, because I was like, I couldn't take it. I was like, okay, it's so cold. Like, I just don't want to deal with it. But you're back in the water. Some of the chafing kind of comes back again. You're tired. You got to make these these charts that show like the obstacles that are on the sea floor. If simulated, if people were like bringing in landing craft, like the Marines, for example. And it took, dude, it was long nights, man. You'd be up until like 11 or 12. I think that week, it just stayed at my room on base. So I wouldn't just to try to get more sleep.
Right.
And then, so that was only a week, but that was for me, for some reason, that was more of a nut kicker than Hell Week. Because mentally I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah. You knew to expect Hell Week. And then this part, and I was
like, what?
You and I grew up reading the same books. Everybody glosses over that part. Like,
they don't talk about that one.
Oh, it's all
that
easy
sucked.
and great.
Like the tedious of charts and stuff. I'm like, man, that drives me crazy.
So you get into second phase. You've lost half, maybe?
Yeah, I'm sure. Because we started with 150. I'd say at least. Yeah.
So you're starting to kind of figure out who's going to make it and who's not.
I would say more than half, because I'd say by that time, I'd say we're probably down to the 30s and 40s.
Okay.
Because we still lost people throughout.
Yeah, and pool comp's the next big
thing.
For attrition.
Yes. So pool comp is kind of like your water competency. Like, you're learning open circuit, then we move into the closed circuit phase of it. But you also got to do, like, when you're doing the initial stuff, like they're going down there tying crazy knots or ripping off all your gear. They give you a knot where you can breathe in, but you can't breathe out. So you got to learn to blow out your nose. And if you do the wrong thing, you're just getting tons of water. You start freaking out. You're like totally drowning feeling, which totally helped. Totally got me, which brings us to the bathtub thing where I had a hard time. I just did blow out your nose, but it's hard to, when you're thinking about all the other stuff, like I got to put my weight belt on, I got to do all this stuff. For some reason, that was kind of it was just my little battle I had to, overcome. So I got a snorkel, and I just would go into my bathtub and I'd fill up the bathtub and I would lay down, of course, warm water because we don't do cold. And I would be breathing through the snorkel and blowing out my nose, through the snorkel, out my nose. And then I got the repetition. I was fine. So when we went for test day,
it's almost like dry firing.
Dry firing, yeah. Yep. Just making sure you're good to go, right? So,
and then onto the couch, and Kayla climbs up on your chest, and you're back in dad mode.
Yep, and then Kayla would every night she'd bring a little blanket, she'd suck on her middle 2 fingers. She'd be watching TV. I'd get my little position on the couch because I'm so smoked, and she would get her blankie without no words were talking. No words were spoken. She would just get up, lay down, watch the TV, and she would just suck on her fingers, and I would just rub her back. It was like the coolest thing in the world. I can still see her getting up, coming over to me, not saying, "Hey, Dad." She would just lay on me, and it was like the most comforting thing in the world.
Yeah, those are some of the best times as a dad.
It was like my service daughter.
Right.
She made it so. She just made it worthwhile. She made it better.
Yeah, you were soothing her, and she was soothing you.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was really cool.
How many guys do you think you lost during second phase? Anybody you remember?
I'd say probably like 5 to 10.
Wasn't there a guy that went on to be a
EOD guy? Yeah, one of my really good friends. He just couldn't make it in the pool comp and the drown proving, and it sucked, dude, because he was really good. Like, he was a stud.
But one little thing like that.
One little thing he couldn't. It was hard for him to float when he was tied up. Which that might be at the end of first phase. I can't remember.
Okay.
I can't remember, but it's somewhere in there. And he was a stud. I was like heartbroken. But he went on to do great things, like became an EOD, which is not an easy task. And he started a company when he got out. Like, he's doing awesome. I still keep in contact with him. He's a great dude.
And now you get into third phase.
So third phase, so you're going from the water, then you're going to the land, where you start off with basic like pistol shooting, your basic service rifles, and then we go into like MP5s, other platforms that you might need to know, AK-47s, stuff that you might see. So you got to learn how to do it all. And then it kind of progresses we go out to the island for the last 3 weeks, where you do your I think grenades are out there, explosives, like putting explosives underwater on obstacles to blow them, because that's where the team started, was blowing up obstacles. Which you got to deal with the current. You got to make sure everything's safe. That's very dangerous, obviously. And then we're just learning about TNT, C4, blasting caps, deck core, shock tube, all kinds of stuff. And then, but all the while, you're still getting your butt kicked. Like, there's tons of classes, but still a blast. Tons of runs. They call it Frog Hill. You got to run up, and you got a certain time. If you don't get it, you got to run up again. And dude, it is a smoker. It like smokes your legs. Like, it is not cool at all.
Tell us about the M4000.
The M4000 is a huge, it's bigger than this table, like lengthwise. It's probably like from here to the end of the table. And it's an M16. And it's kind of like the dunce cap of Buds. And we had a kid, I call him a kid because he was very dumb what he did. He pulled smoke. So they'll be like, all right, grab your initiator. And that's all you do. Like, it's very like, if you can follow instructions, you're good to go, right? Like, hit the power button. Doesn't say to do anything else. Just hit the power button. But like, grab the initiator, and he pulled it to get his smoke on this time fuse. So his time fuse starts, that you calculate how long it takes to set off the explosive. So it was like an instant, all right, cut this. All right, dude, they didn't drop him, but they gave him the M4000. He had to walk around with this huge freaking rifle everywhere, just kind of noting like, hey, this guy's...
And it's heavy.
It's not light. He had to do everything with that thing. Everything besides, I don't think he had to do the 14-mile run with it. I think that's the only thing he didn't have to do with it.
Okay. So how long was he stuck with it after that? Days?
Man, I want to say the whole time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like the whole time.
For pulling smoke too early.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. He learned his lesson.
I bet.
Yeah.
He didn't do that again.
No, he didn't do that again. I feel that he got dropped in SQT.
Okay.
I think he got freaking chickened.
Tell me about Rudy.
Rudy.
He's not really Rudy, but he's kind of the Rudy character in Buds that was...
Oh, yeah, the little guy. Yeah, like, he made it through. He was one of the guys, you look at him, and you were like, that dude's not making it. But he had a lot of heart, like a lot of heart. He wouldn't stop. I mean, he couldn't buddy carry really anyone because he's so small, but the dude wouldn't quit. He wouldn't quit. It was really impressive to see him to keep going and not care what people, because he hears it. He hears the mutters or the whatever the heck you want to call it.
He's heard it his whole life.
His whole life. But he kept going. But he finally got dropped at SQT.
Any idea where that guy ended up?
No clue. I know the guys that went to the East Coast, especially to my team, but that's kind of lost contact with like a lot of dudes. But yeah, Buds is it's an interesting part of your training, obviously, because it's the first exposure to the SEAL teams, and every day is the grind. I mean, every day is a test. Every day is something. There's either an ocean swim, a running event, or something. There's always something. It's not just like, we got an easy day today. There's no such thing. It's pedal to the metal from day one until your last day, all the way through.
Was there anybody that in your class that maybe struggled overall, but then went on to have a really successful career? Or were the studs in Buds the studs in the teams?
I think that everyone kind of struggled with little pieces here and there. But they all had their strong suits too. Like for me, for example, it'd be like, I was a good swimmer because of swimming in high school.
Right.
Not the greatest runner because I'm a bigger dude and, well, I just hate running.
Right.
And so there was dudes that are awesome runners, not great swimmers. There was dudes that really sucked at push-ups, but great runners and great swimmers. So it's just like there was always a weak spot for someone. I don't know of anyone that just got it all. Or like test taking, because you had to take like dye physics.
Right.
Some of them wouldn't get it. They would fail and they had to come back, like come after hours to get, study to get better so they could pass their test. So there was always a weak spot. I don't know anybody that did not have a weak spot. Something. So yeah, and that's okay. That's what it's there for, is to like, so you notice or it identifies what's wrong and where you need to freaking make up for it.
Yeah, because that guy that's a great runner, you're not going to test him by just making him run a lot.
No.
But you put him in the water or somewhere where he's uncomfortable, and that's what they're pushing those buttons.
Exactly. In water, there was definitely more people uncomfortable in the water, obviously, because we're land people.
Right.
Than there were runners. So, but yeah, it did its job. Like Buds does its jobs and kind of forging that warrior for sure.
So it's as hard as advertised.
I don't think you really know how hard it is until you get there.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're like, I'm finally here, let's kick some ass, then that's what you do.
Well, that's a mindset thing.
It's a mindset thing. It's all mindset. I would say, I always use this analogy. Like we talk about this in the book, the beginning of Lone Survivor, the movie. It shows like a bunch of videos of Bud students. I'm getting chills even talking about this. It shows them doing push-ups on the beach. And they can't do it. Like, they can't do it. Like, their muscles are fatigued. They are done. But there's one thing that's still working. Their mind. Their brain and their heart are still working to try to do another push-up. To try to keep going. And that's what they that's what they want. That's what they're looking for. That's what matters. Because, yeah, you're human, man. You're going to get tired. If I physically exert you all the time, you're going to get tired. That brain, on the other hand, baby, that thing that can't break. Can't break or you're going to break.
Unless you let it.
That's your choice. That is a choice. That is a freaking choice.
So was graduation, getting that tried in, was that the proudest moment of your life at that point?
It wasn't the proud. I mean, minus my daughter being born, and that was obviously a very proud moment. But yeah, to hold it, to like feel it. I mean, I'll even go as far as to say caress it. Right? Like it was a big deal to get that bad boy. And I remember we were driving back from West Coast to East Coast once I got assigned to my team. Because that was after you go to Buds and you go to SQT. After I got that, I was freaking like, it was awesome, man.
So the family come out for your Buds graduation?
Mom, dad, my dad's friend. I think that was it on my family. They came out for the graduation, so it was cool to see my dad and my mom there, just like they did for Marine Corps boot camp. So they were there. They were super stoked. They were really happy when like Hell Week. Everyone hears Hell Week,
right?
So hey, I made it through Hell Week.
You don't want your son to go through hell,
and then they're like, oh my God, he's gonna make it. Like, okay, time out. There's still like a lot of months left here. We just like the hardest thing I would say that really knocks people out is Hell Week, because it's testing your brain, man. There's a lot of weak-minded individuals, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it because they just haven't found that switch, and they all have it. They're, like I said in the last podcast, like you and I are not differently made. Like we are, but we are both created equally the same, right? So it really comes down to our brain and heart. And if I wanted to do something, like I couldn't sit down, or I could, but you have a passion for writing. I really don't have that passion. I can do little increments, as you know,
right?
But I can't do what you do. Like you get it. You get it.
Everybody has their thing.
What's that?
Everybody has their
Everybody has their thing. That's right. That's right.